They teach you in business school that silence is leverage, that the person who speaks first loses. But they don't teach you what to do when someone asks about the bodies. I'm not being metaphorical. The email came on a Tuesday. Subject line: Innovation and Ethics in Modern Pharma. Professional. Boring. The kind of interview request my team fields a dozen times a month. Diana Kesh. Podcast producer. Modest following. Nothing that would normally reach my desk. Evelyn wanted to decline. She always does. 23 years with the Bureau taught her that journalists are just criminals with better publicists. But I read the email twice. Something in the phrasing. I'm particularly interested in the decisions that shaped Verne Pharmaceuticals between 2012 and 2014. Most people don't know those were our ghost years. The period we don't mention in shareholder meetings. The 18 months between my father's death and our IPO. When we went from a failing biotech startup to a $9 billion empire. I should have said no. Instead, I said yes. Because men like me don't run from questions. We answer them until the questioner realizes they never wanted to know. She arrived exactly on time. Early 40s. Tired eyes. The kind of tiredness that comes from caring too much about things that can't be fixed. She set up a small recording device between us, vintage, not phone, and smiled like we were old friends. If you're hearing this right now, help me prove something wrong. My mom thinks I'm wasting my time doing this, but if you subscribe, it reminds me that I'm not. The first 20 minutes were painless. Innovation cycles. Market disruption. Regulatory challenges. I could do this conversation in my sleep. I've done versions of it 100 times. My answers were smooth. Practiced. True enough. Then she shifted. Your phase 3 trials in 2013, she said, adjusting her recorder slightly. The Alzheimer's intervention study. NeuraClear 7. That was your father's final project, wasn't it? The Seattle rain picked up outside my window. 43 floors above the street. You can't hear it. You just watch the world blur. My father died in February 2012, I said, before those trials concluded. But you continued his work, of course. Even after the complications. The word hung there. Complications. Such a clean word for what happened. Clinical. Neutral. The kind of word you use in quarterly reports. Every trial has complications, I said. That's why we have protocols. She nodded. Wrote something. Looked up. Dr. Sarah Chun was your lead trial coordinator, correct? I haven't heard that name spoken aloud in a decade. My face didn't move. Years of board meetings taught me that much. But something behind my sternum went very cold. Dr. Chun left the company in 2014, I said. I believe she relocated. We lost touch. She died, Diana said quietly. Car accident. Oregon coast. March 2014. I wasn't aware. Her daughter thinks it wasn't an accident. The rain kept falling. My coffee was cold. Somewhere in the building, my son was probably high in a bathroom stall, burning through his trust fund 1 gram at a time. Evelyn was 3 doors down, listening to everything through the security feed. Grief makes people search for meaning, I said. I understand that impulse. Diana leaned forward slightly. Mr. Verne, how many participants in the NeuraClear 7 trial died before the study was terminated? 7. The answer is 7. 3 during the trial. 4 in the 18 months after. All ruled natural causes. All families compensated. All records sealed. I'd need to review the documentation, I said. I already have, she replied. And that's when I knew. This wasn't an interview. This was a confession. She just didn't know yet which one of us would be giving it. The thing about having a son is that he becomes a walking record of every way you failed. Carson was in the executive lounge when I found him. 3 in the afternoon on a Wednesday, and he was drinking my scotch, the Macallan I keep for board members, not children. 30 years old next month, and he still moved through my building like a teenager looking for his allowance. That interview run long, he asked, not looking up from his phone. I closed the door, locked it. The kind of conversation we were about to have didn't need witnesses. How much have you had? Does it matter? He finally met my eyes. His mother's eyes. Green, with gold flecks. The only beautiful thing I ever helped create, and I gave them to him. You're not my sponsor, Dad. You're barely my father. The words should have hurt. Maybe they would have, if I hadn't heard variations for the past 15 years. Since his mother left. Since he figured out that being Marcus Verne's son came with a penthouse and a trust fund, but not much else. Someone's been asking questions, I said. A journalist. About 2013. Carson's hand stopped halfway to his glass. What kind of questions? The kind you don't answer. I moved to the window. Seattle stretched out below us, gray and infinite. The kind that end careers. He laughed. Sharp. Bitter. Your career's bulletproof, Marcus. You could sacrifice a virgin on the trading floor and your stock would go up. I'm not worried about my career. Silence. Then, she came to see me too. My spine went rigid. What? The journalist. Diana something. 3 days ago. She found me at Nemo's. Asked if I remembered anything about Mom's work at Verne. About the trials. About, he stopped. Drank. About why Mom really left. The room felt smaller, suddenly. Like the walls were interested in our conversation. What did you tell her? Nothing. Carson stood, unsteady. Because I don't remember anything. I was 18. High school senior. You think I paid attention to your corporate bullshit while Mom was packing her bags. But he did remember something. I could see it in the way he wouldn't look at me. The way his jaw tightened. Carson. There were calls, he said quietly. Late night. Mom crying in her office. I heard her once, talking to someone. She kept saying they deserve to know. Over and over. They deserve to know. My father's watch felt heavy on my wrist. He wore it the day he died. Heart attack in his office, surrounded by research he'd never see completed. I finished his work. I made his dream real. I just had to bury a few mistakes along the way. Your mother had a nervous breakdown, I said. The official story. The one we told friends and family. The stress of the trials. The pressure. She needed space to heal. Did she heal, Dad? Carson's voice cracked. Because last I checked, she won't return my calls either. 18 years of Christmas cards to an address in Vermont I'm not allowed to visit. That sound like healing to you? 7 people died. That's what Diana doesn't know yet. What Carson can't know. What his mother knew and couldn't live with. NeuraClear 7 was supposed to reverse cognitive decline. Give people their memories back. Their lives. Instead, it accelerated neural death in a subset of patients. Rare. Unpredictable. Catastrophic. We caught it during phase 3. Pulled the trial. Compensated the families. My father's legacy died with those patients, and I buried it to save the company. Sarah Chun helped me do it. She signed off on the data adjustments. The revised reports. She knew what we were protecting. Then she grew a conscience. Carson, I said carefully, if this journalist contacts you again, you call Evelyn immediately. You don't talk to her. You don't answer questions. You definitely don't tell her about your mother. Why? He stepped closer. Alcohol on his breath. Desperation in his eyes. What are you so afraid she'll find? I'm afraid, I said, and for once I told him the truth, that she already has. My phone buzzed. Evelyn. One word problem. Carson saw my expression change. What now? Go home, I said. Sleep this off. We'll talk tomorrow. We never talk, Dad. You issue instructions. There's a difference. He left. The door closed. I was alone with my father's watch and my son's disappointment and the growing certainty that the past doesn't stay buried. It just waits for the right person to start digging. Evelyn was waiting in my office. Her face told me everything I needed to know before she spoke. Diana Kesh made 17 calls today, she said. Former employees. Trial participants' families. She's building a timeline. Can we stop her? We can slow her. Legal cease and desist. Threaten the podcast platform. But Marcus, she paused. She has source documents, email exchanges, lab reports. Someone gave her access. Who? I don't know yet. But whoever it is, they were inside. Deep inside. I thought of Sarah Chun. Her face in the lab that last day, pale and determined. The way she looked at me when she said she couldn't do this anymore. They deserve to know, Marcus. Their families deserve to know. And I told her what I've told myself every day since. Sometimes the truth costs more than it's worth. 2 weeks later, her car went off a cliff. There's a parking garage beneath Pike Place Market that smells like fish and gasoline and secrets. Diana met her source there at midnight, because that's when people tell you things they can't take back. I wasn't there, but I know what happened. Evelyn pulled the security footage later. Watched Diana stand in the shadows between concrete pillars, waiting. Watched a figure approach in a hospital maintenance uniform, hood up, face down. 23 seconds of conversation. A USB drive exchanged. No handshake. No names. The kind of transaction that ends careers or starts revolutions. The source was David Ortega, 52, lab technician at Verne Pharmaceuticals from 2011 to 2015. Unremarkable personnel file. Average performance reviews. The kind of employee you forget exists. Except David remembered everything. He remembered the morning Dr. Chun came to the lab with patient files she wasn't supposed to have. He remembered her face when she compared the official trial data to the raw results. He remembered the exact moment she realized the numbers had been changed. He remembered because he helped her copy everything before they fired her. Diana spent the next 6 hours in her apartment going through the files. I imagine her there, coffee going cold, rain against the windows, the weight of what she was seeing settling into her bones. 7 deaths. Not complications. Deaths. What made it worse, what made it criminal, was the pattern. All 7 patients shared a genetic marker, APO4, common in early-onset Alzheimer's. The very population NeuraClear 7 was designed to help. In patients with this marker, the drug didn't slow cognitive decline. It triggered aggressive brain inflammation, seizures, hemorrhaging. We knew. After the 3rd death, we knew. And we kept going. My father always said the difference between medicine and murder is documentation. If the paperwork says they signed a consent form, understood the risks, volunteered for science, then you're a hero, a pioneer. If the paperwork doesn't say that, you're something else entirely. Diana found the original consent forms, the ones patients actually signed. They mentioned standard trial risks, headaches, nausea, possible cognitive changes. They didn't mention death. The revised forms, the ones in the official trial documentation, those mentioned everything. Every possible complication. Every worst-case scenario. Those forms were dated 2 weeks after the trial ended. I can see Diana sitting there, staring at her screen, understanding what this meant. Not just corporate negligence. Not just ethical violations. Fraud. Manslaughter. A conspiracy that reached from the lab to the C-suite. She should have gone to the police. But she went to Carson instead. She found him at a club in Capitol Hill. 2 a.m. More cocaine than blood in his system by that point. She showed him everything. Photos of the documents. Names of the dead. Asked him one question. Did your father do this? Carson doesn't remember much from that night. But he remembers calling his mother. 3:17 in the morning. Fingers shaking so hard he could barely dial. She answered on the first ring. Like she'd been waiting 18 years for this call. Carson. Just his name. But the way she said it, like she already knew why he was calling. Mom, I need to know what happened. In 2013. The trials. Dad's company. Please. Silence. Long enough that he thought she'd hung up. Then don't. Don't what? Don't ask questions you can't survive the answers to. People died, Mom. Diana showed me. I know what she showed you. Her voice was different now. Harder. Older. I know, because I'm the one who kept the evidence. And Carson, baby, listen to me very carefully. You cannot be involved in this. You cannot know. Because the moment you know, you become a liability. And your father has a very specific way of handling liabilities. He wouldn't. Ask Sarah Chun. Oh wait. You can't. Because she drove off a cliff 3 months after telling your father she was going to the FDA. The line went dead. Carson sat in his penthouse, overlooking the city his father owned piece by piece, and understood for the first time what legacy actually meant. It meant building empires on graves and teaching your son not to look down. Meanwhile, Evelyn was in her office doing what she does best, making problems disappear. She identified David Ortega within 4 hours. Former employee. Access to archives. Means and motive. She pulled his financials, his phone records, his social media. Built a complete picture of a man who'd carried guilt for a decade and finally found someone willing to listen. We have 48 hours, she told me. Diana's podcast drops Friday morning, 8 a.m. Pacific. She's calling it the NeuraClear Trials, a Verne Pharmaceutical's investigation. I was in my home office. The house was silent. 12,000 square feet of museum-quality art and imported furniture, and the kind of emptiness that money creates. Can we stop it? We can destroy David Ortega. Discredit him. Find something in his past. Plant something if we have to. Make Diana's source look unreliable. And Diana? Evelyn's pause told me everything. She's more complicated. Public figure. Podcast following. Respected in journalism circles. If she goes silent, people ask questions. So we let it publish, I said. Marcus. We let it publish. Then we control the narrative. Rogue trial coordinator. Tragic failures we immediately addressed. Families compensated. Protocols revised. We were victims of Sarah Chen's negligence, not perpetrators. And when they ask why Sarah Chen died? Grief, I said. Guilt. The weight of her mistakes. It's a tragedy. I could hear Evelyn breathing on the other end of the line. Is that what we're calling it now? She asked quietly. A tragedy? I looked at my father's photograph on the desk. His legacy. My inheritance. That's exactly what we're calling it, I said. They say paranoia is just pattern recognition before you have proof. Diana came home to her apartment at 7 p.m. The door was locked. The windows were secure. Everything looked exactly as she'd left it that morning. Laptop on the kitchen table. Coffee mug in the sink. Jacket on the chair. Except her journal was open. She always closed it. Obsessive habit from years of investigative work. Never leave your notes exposed. Never give anyone a roadmap to your thoughts. But there it was. Open to the last page. Where she'd written 7 names in blue ink. The dead patients. The ones whose families signed NDAs and took settlements and agreed to forget. Someone had been in her home. Someone had read her work. Someone wanted her to know they'd been there. She called the police. They took a report. Checked the locks. Found no signs of forced entry. Told her what victims always hear. Probably nothing, but get better locks. Maybe stay with a friend. She didn't stay with a friend. She went to a hotel in Bellevue and moved her entire podcast launch up by 24 hours. If they wanted to scare her quiet, they were 12 years too late. Fear was just fuel now. I found out about the break-in from the police report. Evelyn's contacts in Seattle PD flag anything related to Verne Pharmaceuticals. Standard protocol. Corporate security. Except I never authorized a break-in. I called Evelyn at midnight. She was still in her office. She's always in her office. Tell me you didn't go into Diana Kesh's apartment. Silence. The kind that confirms everything. Evelyn. It was a soft entry, she said. Calm. Professional. Like we were discussing quarterly projections. No damage. No theft. Just reconnaissance. I needed to know what she had. I told you to monitor her, not terrorize her. And I told you this wasn't going away with lawyers and press releases. Her voice hardened. She has everything, Marcus. Names. Dates. Trial data. She has Sarah Chen's personal notes. Do you understand what that means? I understood perfectly. Sarah kept a diary. Daily entries about the trials. About the deaths. About our conversations. About the moment I asked her to change the data. Just adjust the timeline, Sarah. Make it look like the complications occurred post-trial. The families still get compensated. The company survives. Everyone wins. Except the 7 people who died. They didn't win. Where are Sarah's notes now? I asked. Diana has copies. Multiple backups. Cloud storage. Associates who'll publish if anything happens to her. So we're done, I said. It's over. Not if Carson keeps running his mouth. My son. Always my son. What did he do? He went to Diana's hotel an hour ago. They talked for 30 minutes in the lobby bar. Security footage shows him showing her something on his phone. Crying. She took photographs of whatever it was. Text messages. Had to be. Between Carson and his mother. Evidence that I knew. That we all knew. The walls were closing in. Not quickly, but inevitably. Like water rising in a sealed room. Bring him in, I said. Now. Already done. He's in the car with my team. I should have felt relieved. Protected. Instead, I felt like my father must have felt the day his heart gave out. Looking at everything he'd built and realizing it was a monument to the wrong things. Carson arrived at my house at 1 a.m. drunk. Defiant. Terrified. You killed her, he said before I could speak. Sarah Chun. You had her killed because she was going to talk. Your mother has been filling your head with. Mom saved the text messages. He threw his phone on my desk. Your messages. From March 2014. Sarah's become a problem. Handle it. Make sure she understands the consequences. Some situations require permanent solutions. I picked up the phone. Read my own words from a decade ago. Context stripped away. Meaning weaponized. Those messages were about legal action. I said. Cease and desist. Confidentiality enforcement. Then why is she dead? Because she was unstable. Depressed. She drove off a cliff because she couldn't live with the guilt of what happened in those trials. You mean the guilt of what you made her do? The rain had started again. It always rains in Seattle. Constant. Cleansing. Washing nothing away. Carson, listen to me very carefully. Whatever you think happened. I don't think, Dad. I know. Diana has evidence. Testimony. A timeline. And in 6 hours, the entire world knows too. So what's your play now? You going to handle her like you handled Sarah? Make her an unstable journalist who couldn't handle the pressure. I never killed anyone. No. You just created conditions where people died and then made sure no one could prove it. He was right. Functionally, legally, morally, he was absolutely right. And that's when Evelyn came in, phone to her ear, face drained to color. We have a situation. What now? Carson was followed from Diana's hotel. Black Escalade. No plates. Professional tail. Your people. No. She looked at Carson. Then at me. I don't know whose people. Carson's face went white. Sarah Chun died in a car accident. Yes. What kind of car hit her? Evelyn didn't answer. She didn't have to. Black Escalade. No plates. Professional. The same vehicle that forced Sarah Chun off Highway 101 12 years ago was now following my son. Get him out of here, I said. Now. Safe house. Full security. Marcus, if someone else is involved. I said now. They left. Carson looking back at me like he was seeing a stranger. Maybe he was. I stood alone in my office, surrounded by my father's legacy and my own lies, and understood something fundamental. You can't bury the past. You can only choose who digs it up. And someone had just started excavating. The podcast went live at 6 a.m. Pacific Time. Within 2 hours, it had 400,000 downloads. By noon, it was trending on every platform. By evening, senators were calling for investigations. I watched it happen from my office. The empire I built dismantling itself in real time. Stock down 38%. Board members resigning. Legal team fielding calls from 3 different federal agencies. Diana's voice clear and determined, laying out everything. The trial data. The falsified reports. The 7 dead patients. The timeline of Sarah Chen's final months. She was good. I'll give her that. She made it sound like justice. What she didn't know, what neither of us knew, was that justice had nothing to do with it. The call came at 2 p.m. unknown number. I almost didn't answer. Mr. Verne. My name is Julian Voss. I represent Archon Capital Partners. I think we should meet. I knew Archon. Everyone in my world knows Archon. Private equity firm out of New York. Reputation for acquiring distressed assets and stripping them for parts. Vultures in Brioni suits. I'm not selling, I said. I'm not buying. His voice was smooth, educated, amused. Well, not from you directly. We've been acquiring your corporate debt for the past 6 months. Quietly, through intermediaries. As of this morning, we control 42% of Verne Pharmaceutical's outstanding obligations. My blood went cold. Which means, he continued, with your stock in free fall and your reputation in ruins, you have about 72 hours before we force a restructuring. Unless you'd like to discuss alternative arrangements. What do you want? A conversation. Face to face. There are things you need to understand about Diana Kesh's investigation. I understand perfectly. She exposed what happened. She exposed what we gave her. The pause that followed felt like falling. David Ortega didn't find us, Voss said quietly. We found him. 18 months ago. Paid him very well to keep those files safe. Diana Kesh didn't stumble onto a corporate conspiracy. We delivered it to her on a flash drive, wrapped in the illusion of courage. I sat down. The Seattle skyline spun outside my window. Why? Because you're worth more broken than whole. Your stock crashes, your reputation collapses, your board panics. And we acquire a $9 billion pharmaceutical company for pennies on the dollar. Then we quietly settle the lawsuits, rebrand, and profit from your father's actual innovations without the baggage of the Verne name. You manufactured an investigation to destroy my company. We manufactured justice to make you vulnerable. There's a difference. The crimes were real, Mr. Verne. We just made sure they came to light at the most profitable moment. Sarah Chun, I said. The words tasted like ash. The car accident. Ah, yes. That was unfortunate. She was going to the FDA in 2014. Before we had all our pieces in place. We needed her silent, and we needed you blamed for silencing her. 2 birds. 1 cliff. I thought I was going to be sick. You killed her to frame me. We eliminated a variable and created a narrative. Again, there's a difference. Your text messages to her were real. Your pressure campaign was real. We just accelerated the conclusion, made it permanent, made it look like you had means, motive, and opportunity. 12 years. I'd carried the guilt of Sarah's death for 12 years. Believed I'd pushed her too hard, driven her to desperation, lived with the weight of her suicide. Except it wasn't suicide. It was murder. Corporate murder. Balance sheet murder. Diana doesn't know, I said. Of course not. She thinks she's Woodward and Bernstein. She has no idea she's been working for us since the moment David Ortega sent that first email. Quite poetic, really. Using a crusading journalist to execute a hostile takeover. I'll tell her. Please do. She won't believe you. Why would she? You're the villain in her story. We're not even characters. We're just the invisible hand of the market doing what markets do. He was right. Diana had built her entire narrative around my guilt. Reversing that would mean admitting she'd been manipulated, used. That her entire investigation was orchestrated by the very forces she claimed to fight. People don't accept that easily. What do you want from me? I asked. Cooperation. Sign over majority control. Step down as CEO. Release a statement taking full responsibility. In exchange, we don't release the additional evidence. What additional evidence? The evidence we created. Emails you never sent. Financial transactions that never occurred. Testimony from witnesses who'll swear you personally ordered Sarah Chen's death. It won't hold up in court eventually, but the trial will take years. And in the meantime, you'll be destroyed. You're blackmailing me with fabricated evidence. We're offering you a choice. Lose your company or lose everything. I thought of Carson, of his green eyes full of betrayal, of my ex-wife who warned him not to ask questions he couldn't survive. I thought of Sarah Chen's daughter, who spent 12 years thinking her mother committed suicide because of guilt. I thought of Diana Kesh, brilliant and determined, having no idea she'd been a weapon in someone else's war. I need time, I said. You have until Friday at 5 p.m. After that, the fabricated evidence goes public, and you spend the next decade in litigation. Choose wisely, Mr. Verne. He hung up. I sat in the ruins of my empire and understood the truth. I wasn't the villain in this story. I was just another victim who'd been paying for crimes I didn't commit, while the real criminals profited from my guilt. Evelyn found me an hour later, staring at the city. We need to call Diana, I said. Why would we? Because she's in danger. They used her. And when they're done, loose ends get eliminated. Just like Sarah Chun. Marcus, she just destroyed us. I know. I stood, straightened my tie, put on the armor of a man who'd built an empire and watched it burn. That's why she'll believe what I'm about to tell her. Which is, that we've both been played. And if we don't work together, we both die. The rain kept falling. Somewhere in Seattle, Diana was celebrating her victory. Somewhere in New York, Julian Voss was calculating profit margins. And somewhere between guilt and truth, I finally understood what my father never taught me. The real monsters don't hide in shadows. They hide in spreadsheets. Pike Place Market smells like fish and coffee and the kind of desperation that brings enemies together. Diana met me at 6 a.m. Thursday morning. Neutral ground. Public space. She brought a witness, her producer, a nervous kid with recording equipment. I brought Evelyn. We looked like a summit between warring nations. You have 5 minutes, Diana said. No pleasantries. No pretense. I slid a folder across the table. Corporate documents. Transaction records. A timeline that showed Archon Capital systematically acquiring Verne Pharmaceutical's debt starting 18 months ago. You were set up, I said. We both were. She didn't open the folder. This is damage control. Desperate deflection from a man about to face federal charges. David Ortega received $200,000 in March of last year. Deposited across 4 accounts. Source: Archon subsidiary called Prometheus Ventures. Want to guess when he first contacted you? Her jaw tightened. June. Last June. 3 months after they paid him. He didn't find you, Diana. They delivered him to you. Gift wrapped with evidence and a story you couldn't resist. Why would a private equity firm? Hostile takeover. Tank my stock. Force restructuring. Acquire a $9 billion company for a fraction of its value. Your investigation wasn't about justice. It was about profit margin. Her producer leaned in, whispering something. Diana's expression shifted. Not acceptance, but doubt. Our podcast, the kid said quietly. Our biggest donor last year. Anonymous contribution. $500,000. It came from a fund called Archon Media Investments. The market was waking up around us. Vendors setting up. Fishmongers calling prices. Normal people doing normal work, unaware that 3 feet away, a conspiracy was unraveling. Sarah Chun, I said. Tell me about her car accident. Diana opened her laptop. Pulled up files. Single vehicle collision. Highway 101. March 2014. Ruled accidental. Wet roads. High speed. No witnesses. No other vehicles? Report says no. Report says. I emphasized each word. Who investigated? She scrolled. Stopped. Private firm. Highway Safety Consulting. Hired by. Her voice trailed off. Hired by Archon Capital to provide expert analysis for insurance purposes. They controlled the investigation. They wrote the narrative. Just like they controlled yours. Evelyn set another document on the table. Sarah Chen's medical examiner's report. Cause of death. Blunt force trauma consistent with vehicular collision. But there's a notation here. See? Unexplained bruising pattern on upper arms. Consistent with manual restraint prior to collision. Diana read it twice. Someone grabbed her. Held her. Someone made sure she went off that cliff, I said. And then they made sure I looked responsible. My text messages. My pressure campaign. All real. All damning. All perfectly timed to make me the villain when they were ready to pull the trigger. Why tell me this now? Because you're next. You've served your purpose. The stock is crashed. The story is public. You're a loose end. And Archon doesn't leave loose end alive. She wanted to argue. I could see it. Wanted to tell me I was paranoid, desperate, lying. But she'd spent 6 months investigating corporate murder. She knew what these people were capable of. What do you want from me? Help me expose them. Before tomorrow at 5 p.m. After that, they take control of Verne and all the evidence disappears, including the evidence of what they did to Sarah. And to me, she said quietly. My phone buzzed. Carson. I almost declined, but something in my gut said answer. Dad, I'm at the medical examiner's office. I pulled Sarah Chen's full autopsy file. The original one, not the summary. Carson, how did you? Mom's lawyer had it. She's been saving evidence for 12 years. Dad, there's photographs. Sarah's arms. Her neck. She was bruised before the car went off the road. Someone hurt her. Someone. His voice broke. Someone killed her, and we blamed you. And you blamed yourself, and the real killers just walked away. I looked at Diana. My son just confirmed. Sarah Chun was murdered. Archon made it look like suicide, made me look guilty, and waited 12 years to weaponize it. Diana closed her laptop. What's your play? We go public. Together. Your platform. My resources. We expose Archon's acquisition timeline, the paid source, the manipulated investigation, everything. We destroy their takeover before they destroy us. They'll bury us in litigation. Probably. But we'll be alive to fight it. She looked at her producer. At Evelyn. At me. Calculating odds. Weighing trust against survival. Okay, she said. But I control the narrative. My podcast. My voice. You provide evidence and stay quiet. Deal. We spent the next 8 hours building the episode. Diana interviewed me. Evelyn provided documents. Carson sent the autopsy files. We constructed a timeline that showed exactly how Archon Capital had orchestrated a murder, blamed an innocent man, and used an investigative journalist as an unwitting weapon. At 4 p.m., Diana's phone rang. Unknown number. She put it on speaker. Ms. Kesh. Julian Voss. I understand you're planning something inadvisable. How did you? We've been monitoring your communications since you started this investigation. We know you're with Marcus Verne. We know what you're planning. And I'm calling to offer you a choice. I don't negotiate with murderers. Then you'll die as one. Check your email. Sent 3 minutes ago. Diana opened her inbox. Her face went white. It was a video file. Timestamp. March 2014. Grainy parking lot footage. Showing Diana, 12 years younger, different hair, different life. Meeting with Sarah Chun 2 days before her death. You knew her, Voss said. Sarah Chun was your professor at UW. Your mentor. She contacted you about Verne Pharmaceuticals. You convinced her to go public. You're not an investigative journalist who stumbled onto this story, Ms. Kesh. Diana's hands were shaking. You created it. And when Sarah died, you spent 12 years blaming Marcus Verne, never knowing that we'd been watching the whole time, waiting until we could use you. The market sounds faded. The world narrowed to that voice on the phone. Here's your choice, Voss said. You publish your little expose, and we release this footage. Show the world that you had personal investment in destroying Marcus Verne, that your objective investigation was actually a 12-year vendetta. Your credibility evaporates. Or, you walk away, delete everything, disappear, and we let you live with your guilt in peace. Silence. Diana staring at her screen, at Sarah Chen's face in that parking lot, at her own younger self, righteous and naive, thinking she could change the world. 5 p.m. tomorrow, Voss said. Make your choice. He hung up. Diana looked at me. He's right. If people know I knew her, that I was involved, then we tell them, I said. We tell them everything. Your connection to Sarah. My guilt. Archon's manipulation. All of it. The truth. Messy and complicated and real. That's not how stories work. People need heroes and villains. Clear lines. Then we give them a new kind of story, I said. One where everyone's guilty and everyone's a victim, and the real monsters hide in plain sight. Diana closed her eyes, took a breath. Open them. Publish, she said to her producer. Everything. Now. At 4:47 p.m. Thursday, the truth went live. The complicated one. And the world, for once, actually listened. The truth is never simple, and the real villains rarely look like monsters. If this story made you question what justice actually means, leave a comment below. What would you have done in Marcus's position? In Diana's? Sometimes the hardest choice isn't between right and wrong. It's between two different kinds of guilt. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next investigation.